All right. So for today's training, we're going to focus on building sort of components of a story. So how do you tell a story over time by being able to tell that story, not all right away, but being able to break it up and tell it more incrementally. In addition, we're going to look at sort of parts of a whole. And so to do that, I'm just going to share my screen real quick here with you guys. And go to what we're going to work with. There we go. Okay. So hey, Eric. Okay. So the thing we're going to create today together is not this whole ERCOT flow, but rather a component of it. More specifically, this supply curve. So I'm just going to jump to the end so you see sort of the completed version of what this looks like. But I think this applies to many other data types where we are showing one time series data, but then how that time series data is broken down, where these are the component parts of a whole. So this is 100%, so adding up each of them. And then these are the different components that add together for the total supply capacity. So that's mainly what we're going to do today. So I'll go through here real quick, actually building it together. And then we will go into our little breakout sessions, build it ourselves in those groups. And then we can also focus a bit more on your own flows and the data you guys are working with. So before I jump into that, any questions or any questions about what I've gone through so far?
I love, Michael, the software that you use to do your camera. What's that called?
So this is the Flow Tricast. It's basically sort of OBS Lite is another way we describe it. I think we'll be having another release of it very shortly. I don't know if you have another date for when we're getting that next release out.
So are you on Mac or Windows, Joe?
Windows usually.
Okay, so I'll just show it to you real quick. This is the Flow Tricast app, which enables you to go ahead and put yourself down in a corner. So basically, it's just a very simplified interface to do this video mixing. And awesome. In Zoom, essentially what you do is, you select your camera here, but in Zoom, you'll find Zoom or Teams or anything, you'll find a new camera as a possibility called the Flow Tricast virtual camera. And so you just use that as your camera in sharing. And then here you can control whether you're how you're mixing the video. So we've got the circular cutout. I've got the green screen, going here. If you want to use a green screen, but you don't have to, you can just do the circular cutout.
That's awesome. I didn't realize you guys had made that piece of software as well. That's fantastic. Thank you. Can we download that, or is that just for you guys?
Yeah, you can download it. So I've got, I think, finally, it's been a process here, and I've got a good version on Windows, and I'm expecting the Mac final Mac update today. We're still going through the building a code certification. So when you do the install, it pops up and says, hey, this isn't certified, and run anyway. And so I want to get through that before we make a big announcement. But yeah, if you can, I'll put a link in the chat window here, and you're welcome to download it and try it and beta test it for us and tell us if it's working for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That's great.
Jason, about the Tricast, can you also share it as just as sharing screen, or just as a camera?
Yes, you can share screens as well in the Tricasting app. So similar to what I'm doing here, I'm sharing. It's basically just sharing a window, and I'm telling it what window to share. So it's just a normal Chrome window, but you basically can select any window on your screen to be able to present it.
What I mean is the output from the Tricast, you can output as a camera, like a virtual camera.
Yes.
But could you also output as like a screen to share? Because what I realized is on the camera, the resolution is not that great. If you
Right.
share the screen, the resolution is way better. And when we're looking to graphs and stuff like that, that is important.
Yeah, great points. So you're right in that the video feed coming through here does prioritize frames per second. So how fast it's refreshing over the image quality. So one thing we did on our side is for our Zoom account, we have a 1080p account so that it does maintain HD quality while sending it over the pipe. So there are instances where, yes, that still will work, as well as if you're doing a recording for YouTube or anything like that. And for many graphs, it does work. Sort of the other way around it, if resolution is an issue, is to actually share a live meeting link with someone, so then they see it in full fidelity and it can actually interact with the content itself. So that's another sort of way around it. But yeah, that's you can't set it up, the Tricast, as a screen share. Unfortunately, I don't think that's possible.
But you can just click share screen in your Zoom or whatever and share it that
Right.
way. So it's
Yeah.
we don't have any unique goodness there, and that works. It's just that you gain resolution, but you do lose animation and smoothness, and it depends on what you're presenting and who you're presenting it to, which of those you would rather prioritize for.
Yeah. And actually, like on normal presentations, the frames per second would not be that much important, but for flow presentations, they are. Otherwise, the movement and the animations get weird.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely that balance. So for most corporate accounts, they have high enough, quality that it's, or high enough quality video feeds that it's okay. But yeah, there'll definitely be those instances where it's not necessarily.
I wanted to just mention one thing. There is a record here, so that if you're recording for YouTube or something and you want to do this mechanism, that's pretty nice to have a great way to just create that file which you're going to upload to YouTube.
All right, so let's start to build this. So we'll follow along together here. So I'm going to click Create Flow. And I sent an email just prior to this with a link to the data sheet, but I'll just bring it up over here. So this is the Google Sheets, which I shared with everybody. It has the date and time. Now you'll notice that I also have broken out the day, hour, minutes.
We can't see the sheet.
Oh, that's right. Give me one sec. There we go. That's so here we see the date and time. You'll notice that I broke out that date and time to actually break out what day it is, what hour, and what minute. And part of the reason for that is that we can currently filter dates by day, but not by hour. So by basically creating a function that just pulls out the time parameter, we can more easily filter the data as we go through it. So that's one thing just to note here. And those functions are pretty easy. So it's just equals and then hour, and then pointing it to the date and time, and we'll pull back the hour. And same for minute and same for day. So those functions are pretty known and pretty easy to put in. So what we're looking at is the different fuel types and the different megawatts for how much overall capacity there is in the system, which doesn't change, the amount of outages that are currently there for each fuel type. And so then the adjusted capacity, which is the capacity minus the outage or plus the outage to get to the adjusted capacity. Now we do define a different color for each of these in the data file itself, but we'll show you in the tool how you don't necessarily need to use this column, but it does give you the greatest flexibility in terms of picking colors exactly as you'd like them. Now, these are running sums, which we're not going to use necessarily for our calculations, but we will use this percentage sign, which is showing the percent of total capacity, where what would be 100% and then what would be less than 100%. So any questions about the data itself? I'm happy to elaborate on where I got this and all that. Right. So let's actually start to build this. So you might have noticed that there is a new feature here in Flow where you don't necessarily need to upload data from a CSV file anymore. So underneath CSV, you can actually select Google Spreadsheet now, where if it is a public URL, which this URL is, you can import it directly without needing to log in. If it is your private data set, you'll need to log into your Google account in order to link that over. And we're still working on the ability to then publish that, publish it with sharing rights. So right away, we're seeing every dot come into place, and let's start to actually organize this. So on the width axis, we're going to put the date and time, and I'll leave it like that. On the height axis, we're going to put the adjusted capacity. So adjusted capacity being total capacity minus the outages gives us where are things currently. And then on the depth axis, we're going to put the different fuel types. And so we basically recreated now the visual that we saw prior. But there's a few things I want to sort of highlight here. So one is the colors. So we can add a color scheme in here, and we're going to do that based on the different fuel types. And I'm just going to set that to this 12 color. And then what we're going to use today is an area chart. So a little different than connections, but adding a new area chart will basically fill in this area underneath the curve. And so I'm going to do this when columns values match. And basically, I'm going to set it up to be the same as what's looking like fuel type. And so now I've basically created this area underneath each of the charts. So this basically acts very similar to the new connections when we say to axis or map, where it takes it from the line and attaches it to the axis. So it basically acts the same way, but it instead fills in the plane as opposed to just creating one line. And so for this, I will set that to 0. So now that we've set up sort of the over structure, it's one thing just to create one graph and then show that graph, but it's another to add some interaction, the ability to tell a story more dynamically as each day goes on. And so I'd like to add some additional functionality in here. And so I think this is a great sort of segue into more of the story creator, where we can essentially create this template, so to say, by which someone can then go in and create their own story. And so to set that up, we're first going to go into settings and actually enable story creator for this flow. And this will allow people to actually get into the story creator mode to refine the story more. And then we're going to go back into the flow itself, and let's start to adjust some of these parameters and set up what we want as the interactions. So let's actually set up the on select text, and I'll do that as overlay text here, where we're going to pull back the fuel type, the adjusted capacity, which will be in megawatts. So I'm going to label megawatts here, and I'm going to make this in thousands so that you can more easily read it. And I think that should be good. Or percentage control capacity. We'll make this percentage. And it multiplied by 100 automatically. So for that, I'm just going to add a percentage. Okay. So other things, so on rollover, we'll also do this, but let's just make this a little simpler and just have that say the fuel type. And now let's have to do the adjusted capacity. Okay. So now we've set up some on select and on rollover. Looks like the on rollover might not be going through yet. I think that might still be an outstanding bug, but anyways, we can see when we do the on select overlay text here, what we're looking at. Add in a little bit of text here. So from this, some of the other things I think we want to do, one specifically is this axis drag select enabled. Because ultimately, I think what's going to be most impactful here is to tell the story dynamically day by day, as opposed to showing all at once, being able to progressively iterate through this. One other thing you'll notice is that these axes lines, the labels, will stay static here by default. And so one thing I highly recommend is when we go into axis options, is to go to tick labels and then set each of these to face the camera. And that way, when you rotate around, these labels will also face you. So just another sort of small little tip or trick to get that working. So let's go ahead and add in, this ability to basically zoom in on a time parameter. And so what this allows you to do is when holding the Alt key, you can essentially roll over the time domain and select just the dates or the time you're looking at or want to look at. So this gives you sort of the ultimate flexibility to tell the story dynamically and basically build it over time. You'll notice that there's also this zoom button, which when you then select and zoom it, or when you select a range, it will then zoom into that point. So you can actually get more and more refined as you look at less and less points. So I'm going to uncheck that for now because I think we're going to want to leave it a little different. And then I'm going to also add in this highlights. And so for the highlight, I'd like to highlight the fuel type whenever I select it. And that way it sort of stands out and people are knowing to look at it. And I'm going to actually turn off the other ones. So if they miss, I'll turn them dark. That way we can more easily just focus in on that one. Okay, so now we've set up sort of these interactions, the ability to see the data here and sift through the story. So, this would be sort of like the template model that you build and then pass off to someone. And so let me go ahead and save this and I will share and create this public link. So now when I open this flow, I've now opened the flow as a, open the flow as if I'm a normal viewer here. And essentially anyone then can go in because I have that story creator mode on and click on this create as my story. And when you do that, you'll see two options, the story creator mode or the flow editor mode. So flow editor is what we've been working in and how you create sort of all of the details that we went through. But for the story creator mode, let's edit a copy. So it's going to make a copy of that flow and then open up this flow in the story creator mode. And so you'll notice that this mode, there's many less options. So you have far less to deal with, but you have sort of the full power to tell the story. So, just going through that story as I told it, one of the first things I wanted to do was just look at the first day. And so if I look at just the first day here, I kind of want to set that as a step. So I'm going to add a new step. So now I've had this first step where I'm looking at just the adjusted capacity, and perhaps I just want to look only at the total amounts on that first day. So we'll look at just the total, and then on the second one, we'll then look at the breakdown here of the different percentages so that you can see the breakdown. And I'll maybe set the camera on this one. Maybe what we can do is on that first step, actually, let's add some text here to say this is 100% capacity. And so that would be equivalent to 108 megawatts. So I'm going to add an annotation line and actually point that to the very top. So now we have this nice little text graphic, which I'm going to put into an appropriate position.
So I'm just going to mention that the way he moves, rotates the space around left and right is a great way to figure out exactly where this thing is in 3D space. Sometimes you won't understand how far away it is from you unless you rotate the camera the way he's doing to figure out where it's placed.
Yeah, and it looks like face camera is on by default, but you have to click these three dots to get that to go. So just a small little thing there. Okay, so now we've set the overall capacity, and I wanted to keep the filter on this step. So let me that on. Okay. Okay, so we set up the first day, and then the second day, we're then looking at the breakdown here. Sorry, so overall capacity, just the first day. There we go. And then we're going to look at this breakdown of the different component parts, set the camera, and then we'll start to actually build out, day by day. And so let me add a step here, and we're just going to zoom in on wind power, because this is where we see the first decline. So let me actually add in some text here to indicate that, where we see a minus 40% drop in wind power. Let me add a line and connect that down here. So now we can see this more clearly. And re-highlight that. Okay, so we go from here to see the breakdown, and then we see the drop in wind power, which I want to highlight. There we go. And then let me go ahead and add a new step here. And then this last step, let's clear this out, and we'll look over a wider range here until we get to the night of the outage itself. So that would be more like this. And let me add one more step here. And on this step, we are going to then look at the big decline here. And so this decline, we are going to highlight this and add just a little bit of text to say this is where we see the minus 30% drop in natural gas. Connect that to this line. And so now we have this lined up, and we have that. There we go. Cool. So on that one, I'm just hitting the Alt key to do this highlight here. And so then let me do one last step here. And on this last step, I'm just going to remove all filters, and we can just see everything. And yeah, and I think actually let me do one last thing, which is to say this was a 3-day outage. And lined up. And so on this outage, let's go ahead and add some line to say it went from here, oops, to here. So now we sort of have this little bit of a range, so to say. And let's do the lines to move it popping up. Let's go back to it. There we go. Okay, so now we basically set this scene up, and just like before, this is now this is a live presentation. So I can basically, this is a full presentation now. I can click exit the story editor, and this is now live. And so I should be able to share this. So I can click this enable public link. And this is now live and able to be shared. So I can send this to everyone here. And we can dive in. So yeah, that gives a bit of a primer here of one, this story creator mode, and how it's basically this, it's meant for someone that doesn't have that level of deep technical expertise to be able to dive in and basically craft a story by piecing it together sort of piece by piece like this, and tell a more dynamic story. So one other thing you're noticing here is that every time I hit next, the connection lines disappear, and then it moves, and then it reappears. And that actually is a function of something in the editor itself. So let me go back into the editor.
I think you're confusing the way connections lines, area charts, and connections lines work. I think the area charts aren't going to animate the way you're expecting.
Oh, okay, no mind. Okay, so yeah, that's basically it. Anything else to add in, Jason, Bill, Sierra?
Just this idea that there's a whole enterprise workflow that matters. You've got different people with different expertises at different times, and we don't expect the whole world to learn the Flow editor, but we do expect another set of users to get comfortable with the story creator. And Michael didn't show, but you can actually like reorder the steps, delete steps. Of course, he showed how to filter those and add annotations and add text. And so the idea is that you've got someone who does not have as much expertise with the Flow editor, but is actually the presenter or getting it ready for their immediate boss, who is the presenter, who can use that story creator mode to really smooth out the enterprise workflow of accomplishing the goal of getting ready for tomorrow's meeting.
Right. All right. So I'm going to create these the breakout rooms. So I know we have less people today. I don't know if Bill and Sierra, if you just want to join one of our groups, and we'll just do two for today, if that works for everybody. So let me just go ahead and I'm just going to make 2 rooms here for.
I got Joe and Eric.
Okay. Yeah. So just be Francisco and I. Okay. Cool.
And before you go, let's see, I just want to make sure that your Google Sheet. I guess people will want to create their own Google Sheet out of it if they want to use that, so that it's not.
It's a public doc too.
It's a public doc, so we can all use the same sheet.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to put that link in the chat window too?
It is. Oh wait, that's not much.
You emailed it. I can find it there, but
yeah, I'll put it in the tab here.
got it. Oh, we got it now.
Okay. Cool.
So,
all right. So breakout rooms should be open. Stop this.